The curious boy in a quiet room. The room was small, barely enough for a bed, a desk, and a humming desktop computer that flickered softly in the dark. 12-year-old Mark sat with his back straight, eyes locked onto the screen. While the world outside rustled with late autumn winds and the muffled cheers of kids playing on the street, Mark was lost in lines of code he barely understood but deeply felt. He wasn't like the others. Conversations in school blurred past him, sports held no thrill, and lunch breaks were an exercise in observation rather than participation. He wasn't shy, just somewhere else, mentally distant, eternally curious. His father, Edward Zuckerberg, a local dentist, had noticed early. While other kids played with action figures, Mark had dismantled their circuits. On his 12th birthday, Edward gifted him an old Atari 800 XL and a thick programming manual. "You'll figure it out," he said with a gentle grin. He didn't know that moment would plant the seed for something unimaginable. Within weeks, Mark had built a messaging system for the house. Zucknet, he called it. It let his father send messages from the clinic downstairs to the family upstairs. No one had asked for it. No one needed it. But it worked, and it lit something inside him. His mother, Karen, worried. "He's spending too much time in front of that screen," she whispered during dinners. But Edward shook his head. "Leave him be. He's building something." Still, the isolation grew. Even in classrooms filled with noise, Mark often felt alone. Teachers praised his intellect but frowned at his disinterest in group projects. He didn't rebel. He simply didn't relate. His world wasn't made of people. It was made of logic, puzzles, and possibility. One chilly evening, rain tapping the windows in rhythm, Mark sat coding alone. The lamp cast a soft halo around him as the cursor blinked in silence. He paused and glanced at the wall where he'd pinned a photo of his family, all smiling, connected. Then, his eyes drifted back to the screen. What if everyone could talk like this? What if the whole world could be in the same room? He didn't have the words for it yet, but the thought rooted itself. Connection. Not the kind defined by wires or software, but something bigger, something that crossed oceans, beliefs, and languages. The code wasn't perfect. It crashed often. But every error taught him something new. That night, before closing his eyes, he jotted in his notebook. "One day, I'll build something that brings people together. Not just a few, everyone." And though no one else heard it, deep in the quiet, a revolution had just taken its first breath. The giant called Facebook. The Harvard campus was cold, cloaked in ambition and old money. Mark walked its brick pathways with his hood up, eyes down, hands tucked into the sleeves of a sweatshirt far too plain for the legacy-rich students around him. He didn't care. Prestige meant little. What mattered to Mark was hidden in the glow of his laptop: code, precision, and the quiet thrill of building something that could outlive him. Inside Kirkland House, the dorm room buzzed with the quiet chaos of creation. Eduardo Saverin scribbled numbers on a whiteboard. Dustin Moskovitz tapped out messages. Chris Hughes organized outreach. And Mark, he coded. Tirelessly. Obsessively. It began with a simple idea, a digital directory for students, a way to know who is who. Pictures, interests, relationship status, a snapshot of student life, shareable and instant. It wasn't revolutionary, not yet. But it had potential. They called it the Facebook. Within hours of launch, it took over Harvard. Then Yale. Then Columbia. It leapt from campus to campus like wildfire, fueled by curiosity, vanity, and the basic human urge to be seen. Every click, every new profile, brought Mark's quiet vision into sharper focus. But success is never without friction. Lawsuits emerged. Accusations from classmates, the Winklevoss twins, who claimed Mark had stolen their idea. Meetings grew tense. The air between friends thickened with money talk, equity splits, and silent rivalries. Still, Mark pressed forward. He dropped out of Harvard, severing ties with the world that had given him his start. He moved to Silicon Valley, laptop in hand, ambition unchecked. Investors arrived. Sean Parker, co-founder of Napster, entered the picture like a gust of wind, charming, reckless, persuasive. He convinced Mark to drop the. It was sleeker now. Just Facebook. The company exploded. Offices expanded. Staff multiplied. Billions flowed in. Mark, barely 21, became the world's youngest billionaire, a hoodie-wearing titan in a sea of suits. But the more he built, the further he drifted from the simple intention that had started it all. Facebook wasn't just a website anymore. It was a mirror for the world, beautiful, messy, dangerous. As millions poured in, so did their lives, their secrets, their politics. Mark watched the platform grow into something he could no longer fully control. And yet, amid the chaos and headlines, he clung to the mission. Give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. But behind that polished mantra, cracks began to form, in trust, in ethics, in the delicate line between connection and control. Mark had built his giant. The world had climbed inside. But giants cast long shadows. And somewhere within those shadows, a reckoning was coming. The crisis, the pivot, and the fall. The screen lit up with headlines. Facebook and the 2016 election. Cambridge Analytica scandal. Data misuse allegations. Mark sat motionless in a darkened office, the glow from the monitors casting long shadows on his face. His once celebrated creation had become the world's scapegoat. Politicians, journalists, and citizens alike pointed fingers, not just at the platform, but at him. He was no longer seen as the boy genius who connected the world. Now, he was the man accused of helping break it. The accusation struck deep. That Facebook had manipulated voters. That it had become a tool for misinformation, division, and unchecked surveillance. The platform that had once felt like a bridge now felt like a weapon. Mark was summoned to Washington. Before rows of suited senators, he sat stiffly, fingers interlaced, blinking under the harsh lights of televised scrutiny. The questions came fast. Did Facebook sell user data? Can you guarantee election interference won't happen again? Do you even understand the power you've created? He answered carefully, measured in tone. But behind his eyes was something else, uncertainty, perhaps even guilt. The empire he'd built had outgrown him, warped into something beyond his control. Back at Meta's headquarters, morale was shaken. Employees debated ethics. Trust inside the company fractured. Outside, users began deleting accounts. The public trust that had fueled Facebook's rise was evaporating. Mark retreated from the spotlight. He spent long nights alone, walking the office corridors, thinking. Not about investors or lawsuits, but about purpose. The mission he had once whispered as a teenager felt lost beneath the noise. And then, quietly, a shift began. In the chaos of public backlash, Mark turned his attention inward. Away from timelines and likes, toward the future. A future shaped by technology far deeper than social media. He called it the metaverse, but in truth, he was reaching for something even more transformative: artificial intelligence. While critics focused on regulation and reputation, Mark began investing in AI research. Quietly assembling teams. Open sourcing models. Studying language, vision, and the boundaries of machine reasoning. It wasn't a public spectacle. It was a silent pivot, a recalibration of ambition. This time, it wouldn't be about connecting the world. It would be about understanding it. In one rare internal email, he wrote, "If we're going to rebuild trust, we need to create tools that empower, not exploit. And it starts with giving the future away." It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't televised. But it marked something profound. The boy who once coded alone in a bedroom was now facing his greatest reckoning, not just with the world, but with himself. His fall from grace was undeniable. But hidden beneath the ruins was a new blueprint. A quieter revolution was beginning to rise. The new war: AI, redemption, and legacy. The world had changed again, and so had Mark. No longer the wide-eyed coder, no longer the embattled tech CEO under fire. He now moved with quieter confidence, older, yes, but clearer too. The headlines still swirled, but he no longer chased them. His eyes were fixed on something else: artificial intelligence. Inside Meta's AI research lab, the energy was different. Not like the early Facebook days, frantic, hungry, but thoughtful, deliberate. Teams worked not just on systems that could connect people, but ones that could understand them. Mark stood at the edge of a demonstration room as engineers unveiled a new large language model, Llama, Meta's open-source answer to the rising giants of AI. He didn't flinch at the competition. OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, they were all in the race. But Mark wasn't just racing for market share. He was chasing redemption. Where Facebook once collected data, these AI tools were designed to share knowledge, enhance creativity, and, most importantly, remain open. This time, control wouldn't belong to a single gatekeeper. Mark had learned that power without accountability corrodes purpose. He began speaking less like a CEO and more like a steward. AI should not belong to a few corporations. It should belong to the world. We can't afford to repeat the mistakes of the past. Developers from across the globe, Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, began using Meta's open-source AI models to build apps, translate languages, teach children. Mark watched quietly as the tools took root where Facebook's influence had once been shallow. It wasn't about connecting everyone anymore. It was about empowering them. Behind the scenes, he spent time mentoring young engineers, those who reminded him of his teenage self. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't promise success. He simply encouraged curiosity. "What are you building?" he would ask. And sometimes, that was all they needed. The ghosts of the past weren't gone. Scars remained, on the company, on his public image, on the dream that had once burned so brightly. But now, Mark seemed to carry them with intention. Not as shame, but as reminder. He no longer chased connection for connection's sake. Now, he chased meaning. In one quiet moment, standing alone at a glass window overlooking the Meta campus, Mark wrote something in his notebook, a habit he hadn't broken since childhood. Maybe it was never just about building. Maybe it was about becoming. And as the world entered a new age of artificial intelligence, uncertain, thrilling, dangerous, Mark Zuckerberg stood not as a prodigy or a villain, but as a man changed by failure, sharpened by time, and quietly reaching, once more, for something bigger than himself. The revolution had evolved. But the boy in the quiet room? He had never truly left. The end.